by Nichiren Daishonin called The Unanimous Declarations by the Buddhas. The longer title, you have to go to the beginning to find out what that is because I don't want to go look it up now. Okay, so here I am in my bathrobe. Sorry. I took a shower tonight because my wife wanted me to take a shower. I'm American. I usually take a shower in the morning, so she wants to take it at night because that's the Japanese way, and I finally said okay. And so I'm not going to go put on new clothes before I go to bed because then I'm going to have to take a shower in the morning like I do like an American person. So anyway, I do have boxer shorts under here, so I'm not like completely naked. But anyway, I know I'm going to hear stuff from the Japanese. It's improper to read Gosho when you're in a bathrobe, but I don't believe in any of that bullshit. That's all cultural crap that I don't buy. Okay, so great concentration and insight relates that long ago there was a man named Shuang Chong. I don't know if I'm saying that right. But anyway, it doesn't matter. He was a Chinese guy. He had some long Chinese name. Who dreamed that he became a butterfly and passed 100 years in that state. His sufferings were many. His pleasures few. Sweat poured from him, and then he awoke. When he did so, he saw that he was not a butterfly, that no 100 years had passed, and he had experienced neither suffering nor pleasure, and that it was all false and empty, all a mere illusion. This is the gist of the passage. Okay. On Great Concentration Insight comments, quote, ignorance is comparable to the butterfly dream, and the 3,000 realms of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life are comparable to the 100 years. Not a single moment of life is real, just as the butterfly does not really exist. And the 3,000 realms also do not exist, just as there is no real passage of years in the dream. End quote. So life, you think you go through all these sufferings and all this stuff, and then you end up becoming victorious if you finally wake up to the fact that you're a Buddha from a time without beginning. And then you realize all that was just a fucking illusion because you were never really a limited being. You were always an infinite being, and you've always been just playing a game, just a false role that is not really the true you. It's all just a dream. Okay, so as soon as you guys are ready to wake up to your true self, you can just have peace, joy, and glory all your life and be an unlimited being and save others from their delusion. Okay. These passages of commentary describe the attainment of Buddhahood in one's present form. While dreaming he is a butterfly, he does not cease to be the same Shuangjiang as before. The name is spelled Chuang, which I don't know what that says. And I guess the last name is Chao. Chou maybe? Chao? Shang Chao. So he never ceases to be this person as before. And when waking to find he is not a butterfly, he is not a different Shang Chang. He's not a different person, he's the same person. While one believes that one is an ordinary person in the realm of birth and death, this is comparable to dreaming that one is a butterfly, a state of distorted views and distorted thoughts. And when one realizes that one is the thus come one of original enlightenment, that means you're a Buddha from time without beginning, from original enlightenment, which we already said was eternally endowed, which means it's forever, from time without beginning. Okay. This state is comparable to the original Changhuang, or the attainment of Buddhahood in one's present form. So, when you wake up from the dream that you're a butterfly, and otherwise, you wake up from the dream that you're really going through all these sufferings, and you're playing like you're a limited being, and you're playing like you have sicknesses, and you're playing like you have financial difficulties, and you're playing like you have problems with the relationships and all that. It's just all an illusion because you're just not awake yet to your true self as an unlimited being, a Buddha from time without beginning. This is not to say that one attains Buddhahood while in the form of a butterfly. The belief that one is a butterfly is empty or false. one could never speak of attaining Buddhahood in such a form. That would be one of the questions. One of the question. That would be one of the question. Doesn't make any sense. There must be a typo on this one. Oh, unless they're talking about the question, as in Access Consciousness talks about the question is all questions. And maybe that's what it means here. One could never speak of attaining Buddhahood in such a form. That would be one of the question. Okay. Once we realize that ignorance is like dreaming, that one is a butterfly, then our distorted thoughts are seen to be like yesterday's dreams, things lacking in an intrinsic nature or entity, mere delusions. Who would ever put faith in the empty dream of the realm of birth and death and harbor doubt about the Buddha nature or nirvana that is eternal and unchanging? Okay. So the nirvana in this passage is not the nirvana that was the expedient means nirvana, which was called blown out, which means we're going to extinguish you from the state of birth and death by blowing out your life force so you'll never have to be reborn again. But you're eternal, so there's no way you can be born or dead. You've been born a million times, but you never really died because it was all a myth. It was all a dream. It was all in a dream state. Okay. Welcome to the dream. Great concentration and insight states ignorance or illusion are in themselves the eternal nature of phenomena, but due to the influence of delusions, the essential nature of phenomena changes into ignorance, giving rise to all the topsy-turvy categories of good and not good. It is just as when the cold weather comes, water congeals and changes into hard ice, or again, as when one falls asleep and one's mind undergoes a change and produces various sorts of dreams. Now, these various topsy-turvy views are all part of the essential nature of phenomena, something to be understood as not identical with it, and yet not different from it either. The arising and extinction of such topsy-turvy views is like the illusion of a ring of fire that one creates by whirling a torch in a circle. So if you wheel a torch in a circle, you'll see the illusion of a ring of fire, but it's not really a ring of fire. It's just optical illusion because you're not seeing time stand still because it can't stand still. Okay, so you're not seeing time stand still when you're eternal Buddha, always been an eternal Buddha. One does not really believe in the arising and extinction of such topsy-turvy views, but knows they are only a product of the mind. One believes only in the essential nature of phenomena. Arising is the arising of the essential nature of phenomena, and the extinction is the extinction of the essential nature of phenomena. When one realizes this, one sees that there is, in fact, no real arising and extinction. So death and life, there's no such thing. That one has only mistakenly believed there was such arising and extinction. What we refer to as delusions are all simply part of the essential nature of phenomena. The essential nature of phenomena acts upon the essential nature of phenomena. The essential nature of phenomena gives thoughts to the essential nature of phenomena. It is the essential nature of phenomena throughout. There is no time when it is not the essential nature of phenomena. So everything is essentially a Buddha from time without beginning because it's the true aspect of all phenomena, or the 10 factors of life. As we see from this passage, there is never an instant when the essential nature of phenomena ceases to exist. To fail to understand this principle and instead give way to the belief that the manifestation of ignorance such as the dream of a butterfly, are real in nature is to be led astray. The ninth volume of the Great Concentration and Insight states, quote, the example is to for example, it is comparable to the phenomena of sleep that comes over the mind, so that in one instant of thought the mind dreams of countless different worldly affairs. With regard to tranquil extinction, the essential truth of things, can there be any question of an order of precedence? All living beings are in the state of great nirvana. There is no question of any further extinction. So how could there be any question of precedence, of higher or lower, of greater or smaller? This state is the birthlessness of the birthless, and hence cannot be explained in words. But because it involves causes and conditions, which are those are one of the 10 factors, causes and conditions, it can, in a certain sense, be explained. The first 10 links in the 12-link chain of causation constitutes a cause for the salvation of living beings. But explaining the various stages of this process is like painting a picture or planting a tree in the empty air, no more than an expedient means adopted in an attempt at explanation, end quote. Okay, so in this passage I just quoted, there is no question of any further extinction. So, how could there be any question of precedence, of higher or lower, of greater or smaller? So this idea that there's a Dai Gohonzon and a regular Gohonzon, or there's a Dai Shonin and a regular Shonin, or there's a true Buddha and a not true Buddha, and a bigger Buddha or a smaller Buddha, or anything like that. Those are all distinctions, and the true Buddha is without distinctions, which is you and me. Okay, the essential being and the environment of the 10 worlds are the Buddha of the Dharma body, one who possesses the virtue of the 3 bodies in a single entity. The 3 bodies of the Buddha, or the 3 factors of life, the first 3 factors, appearance, nature, and entity. Once one has understood this, one will fully realize that all phenomena are the Buddhist law. This is known as the stage of hearing the name and words of the truth. From the stage of hearing the name and words of the truth, one proceeds directly to the attainment of Buddhahood in one's present form. Thus, in the teaching of the perfect and immediate enlightenment, there are no successive stages of practice. So all the early Buddhist stages of Buddhism talks about stages of practices. You go through millions of lifetimes of reincarnations before you become enlightened. But that was all an expedient means, as explained in the final teachings. And that's exactly what this is saying. There's no stages, because everyone in their true essence is a Buddha from time without beginning. You're already there. Whether you're awake to it or you're asleep to it doesn't matter, because that's still part of the essential nature of life, that you are a Buddha. Okay. Hence, profound meaning states, many scholars in the latter age seize on the various methods for cutting off delusions set forth in the sutras and treatises as an expedient means and argue over them. But as in the case with water, how can you tell whether it is cold or not unless you drink some? Shakyamuni states the opinion. Oh, I said Shakyamuni and I'm looking at Tiantai. How Shakyamuni came into my mind, I don't know. Sorry, misquote. Tiantai states the opinion. So Tiantai is the founder of Tendai sect. That's what it's called in Japan. But Tiantai was actually the name of the mountain where he had his monastery in China. His real name is Chi, or there's many other honorific names he had, but they named him after the mountains, Tiantai Mountains. Okay, because that's where he had his monastery. So he states The order in which the different stages of religious practice proceed is set forth in the Benevolent King and Jeweled Necklace Sutras, and the higher and lower degrees to which delusions can be cut off are described in the Larger Wisdom Sutra and the Treatise on the Great Perfection of Wisdom. End quote. The Benevolent King's Jeweled Necklace and Larger Wisdom Sutras and Great Perfection of Wisdom are all sutras and treatises that belong to the 8 teachings that precede the Lotus Sutra. The religious practices set forth in the provisional teachings require countless kalpas in order to be carried out stage by stage, and hence these texts describe these successive stages. But the Lotus Sutra presents the perfect teaching that transcends the 8 teachings, a type of immediate enlightenment to be quickly achieved. One perceives that the mind, the Buddha, and living beings, these 3 are all encompassed within the single instant of mind. Outside of the mind, nothing else exists. I underline this part. Thus, even practitioners of inferior capacity are able, within a single lifetime, to reach the stage of perfect enlightenment. So with the Lotus Sutra, in a single lifetime, we were able to reach, even if you have inferior capacity. So it doesn't matter what your capacity is. So all these people that are trying to say that Nichiren never became a Buddha in his lifetime, and he practiced the Lotus Sutra all of his lifetime, is saying that the Lotus Sutra is lying. What it's saying, and this sutra is lying, or this Gosho from Nichiren is lying. And this is actually, in this Gosho, it's all based on the writings of his predecessors like Tiantai and Dengyo, who said the very same thing. So it says, but Nichiren, Shu, believers believe Nichiren, I wrote this in my note, didn't even reach enlightenment in his life. So that's pretty crazy. The one and the many are mutually identical, and hence one stage of religious practice includes within it all stages of practice, and thus one may reach enlightenment within a single lifetime. If even persons of inferior capacity are able to do so, how much more so then in the case of those of middling capacity or those of superior capacity, like Nichiren. Outside of the true aspect, there is no other thing that exists, and the true aspect knows nothing of stages or degrees. Hence, there is no such thing as a stage of religious practice. So everyone who thinks I'm in a stage of religious practice where someday I'm going to be I'm going to be enlightened to the enlightenment of the Buddha, is not practicing Nichiren Buddhism, because Nichiren Buddhism is basically this Gosho and all the other Goshos like this, which I'll read in the future hopefully. But this is just one that clearly puts it right out there. And those people in Nichiren Shu that think this is not written by Nichiren, okay, that's because you're not willing to know, perceive, and receive your true nature as a Buddha from time without beginning. And everything you're doing to deny that is you're denying that this is documentary proof. Whether Nichiren ever wrote it or not is completely insignificant. Just like whether people say Shakyamuni ever taught the Lotus Sutra, it really is completely meaningless. Whoever taught the Lotus Sutra was enlightened because the Lotus Sutra is an enlightened sutra. And whoever wrote this Gosho was enlightened because it's an enlightened Gosho. So whether it was Nichiren or not, I don't know, and I don't care, because it is perfectly logical. When I read it, it is perfectly in tune with all of the teachings of the Buddha, regardless of what Buddha you want to say that is, whether it was Tiantai or Dengyo or Nichiren or any other Buddha, or myself as a Buddha. Okay, going on. I'm going to do a long one now because I've been kind of taking time off. Broadly speaking, the sacred teachings of the Buddha's lifetime represent a law or doctrine pertaining to the individual. One should thus strive to achieve a very clear understanding of one's own original entity as an individual. To awake to that is to be a Buddha. To be confused about that is to be an ordinary living being. This is the message contained in the text of the Flower Garland Sutra. The Flower Garland Sutra was preached before the Lotus Sutra. I don't know how many years before, but anyway. The sixth volume of On the Great Concentration and Insight states, quote, "One understands that everything that is contained within this body of ours is modeled after heaven and earth. Thus we see that the roundness of the head is patterned after the heavens. The squareness of the feet imitates the form of the earth. The empty spaces within the body correspond to the empty sky. The warmth of the belly is patterned on spring and summer. The firmness of the back is patterned on autumn and winter. The four major parts of the body imitate the 4 seasons. The 12 large joints imitate the 12 months. The 360 smaller joints imitate the 360 days of the year." This is based on a moon calendar, which has 360 days because it goes on the moon rise and moon whatever. It goes on the new moon is the new month. Okay, that's what month means, moon. Okay, the breath going in and out of the nose imitates the wind passing over the mountains, lakes, and stream valleys. The breath going in and out of the mouth imitates the wind in the open sky. The eyes correspond to the sun and the moon, and their opening and closing correspond to day and night. The hairs of the head are like the stars and constellations, the eyebrows like the stars of the Big Dipper, the veins like the rivers and streams, the bones like the rocks, the skin and flesh like the earth, and the body hairs like the thickets and groves of trees. The 5 major organs correspond to the 5 planets in the sky, the 5 sacred mountains on the earth, the 5 agents in the yin-yang cosmology, the 5 constant virtues in human society, the 5 components that make up the mind, the 5 virtues in terms of conduct, and the 5 penalties in terms of the regulation of crime. The 5 penalties are tattooing, amputation of the nose, amputation of the feet, castration, and the death penalty. Okay, so I guess that's why tattooing is not allowed in the onsens in Japan, the hot springs. They're really against tattooing. It's one of the crimes, I guess. These are talking from Confucius's writings, so maybe in China you can't do that either. Anyway, but the Yakuza have them. They don't want them in their pools either. These 5 penalties represent various kinds of injuries inflicted on the individual as a form of punishment. They amount in all to 3,000 types of punishment, but are summed up under the term 5 penalties. In terms of governors of the realm of heaven and earth, the 5 major organs correspond to the 5 offices. The 5 offices are discussed later on in Volume 8, where notes on the objects in nature is quoted. There are Changmang, some Chomang, K-O-U--MANG, some Chinese name, and the other deities, so it's some kind of deity. These ascend to the sky and become the 5 kinds of clouds, or undergo transformation to become the 5 kinds of dragons. The heart corresponds to the red bird of the south, the kidney to the black tortoise of the north, the liver to the green dragon of the east, the lungs to the white tiger of the west, and the spleen to the hooked stars. Okay, this is all from Confucius writings anyways, which a lot of Buddhist writings quote to kind of show parables between different ideas. In any state, or it also states, quote, the 5 musical notes, which is the 5-tone scale in a Chinese scale, which is da 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 da. It's a 5-note scale. They don't have the 7th, and they don't have the what notes? The 4th. Okay, let's see. It also states the 5 musical notes, the 5 fields of study, the 6 arts all arise from the 5 major organs. And if we consider the correspondences as they apply to the domestic administration, we see that the mind of enlightenment within the individual is comparable to the great king who resides within 100 encircling walls. When he comes forth, he is flanked and guarded by the 5 offices. The lungs correspond to the minister of war, the liver to the minister of the interior, the spleen to the minister of the works, the 4 limbs to the general populace, while to the left is the supervisor of fate, and to the right the supervisor of records, to control and supervise the lifespan of the individual. The navel corresponds to the Lord of the great unity, and so forth. All of these correspond as clearly set forth in the teachings of the practice of meditation. Sorry, I need a drink. I'm going to stop soon. That's the end of that long quote from the writings of Nichiren, I think it is. Or Mialo. Which one? I can't remember. If we look carefully into the basic entity of the individual, we find it to be as just described. And to suppose that this diamond-hard, indestructible body is in fact a body belonging to the impermanent realm of birth and extinction is a form of distorted thinking comparable to Chang Chao's dreaming that he was a butterfly. This is what this passage of commentary is telling us. The 5 agents are earth, water, fire, wind, and space, or ku, or ether, is space. They are also referred to as the 5 elements, the 5 components, the 5 precepts, the 5 constant virtues, the 5 directions, the 5 kinds of wisdom, the 5 periods of teaching. It is simply that one single thing is explained in different ways in the various different sutras, or that the Buddhist texts and the non-Buddhist texts give different names to the various categories. Okay, I'm going to end pretty soon. If now we consult the Lotus Sutra, we find that it opens up and explains these 5 agents as the 5 aspects of Buddha nature. And the seed of the five wisdom thus come ones that are to be found in the lives of all living beings. They are thus equivalent to the 5 characters Myoho Renge Kyo. Myoho Renge Kyo is the title of the Lotus Sutra, the penultimate teaching before the Nirvana Sutra. Or actually, it's part of the threefold Lotus Sutra, which is preached before the Nirvana Sutra. Okay, so Myoho Rengekyo is the 5 characters that represent all these 5 different categories of things, which are just described differently. I think this one, because I've underlined it in height, I've put stars next to it. This is where I'm going to end, because this is probably the most profound in what I've read today. These 5 characters are what make up the entity of the individual, and hence that entity exists eternally in its original state. It is the thus come one of original enlightenment. So, what this is saying is that we are the individual who is the thus come one of original enlightenment. So, Madhurayama Sensei, who said, who is the original Buddha from time without beginning? It says right here, it's the individual who practices the Lotus Sutra. That's you, me. Unless you're practicing the wrong sutra. But I think you're practicing the Lotus Sutra. You just haven't figured it out yet. Okay, this is what is explained in terms of the 10 factors of life. That which can only be understood and shared between Buddhas. This is my last quote. This is from that section. Bodhisattvas who have reached the stage in which there is no more regression, or people who have attained the highest stage in the 2 vehicles, know nothing whatsoever of this doctrine, but ordinary people who follow the teaching of perfect and immediate enlightenment understand this, even when only beginners in religious practice, and therefore they are able to attain Buddhahood in their present form, to enjoy the entity that is diamond hard and indestructible. Okay, so that's where I'm going to end, because this is pretty much it. The people that are stuck in the world of learning and realization, because they can't get past that, all these theoretical teachings, and they're stuck on these theoretical, and they're stuck in the cognitive mind, which isn't the heart, which is the true mind. They can never figure out that they're the true Buddhas from time without beginning. They're trying to make distinctions and say, was it this guy, was it this guy, was it this Gohanzen, was it this Gohanzen, who's the true object of worship, who's all this? And they're all looking outside of themselves. And the Daishonin says in many goshas, if you seek this Gohanzen outside of yourself, you are practicing an inferior teaching, not Buddhism. So that's basically what this gosha is saying, the same thing. If you seek true enlightenment outside of yourself, you are not practicing Buddhism. You are practicing Christianity and calling it Buddhism, or some other inferior teaching that teaches that the Buddhas or enlightenment or God or something is outside of you, because there's nothing outside of you. You are the Buddha from time without beginning. You are God. You are infinite beings. And I'll be back with you for the rest of this gosha, because this gosha just keeps getting more incredible each time I read it. Okay.